Paul, we see the committee has Ohio State at #1. Do you agree that Ohio State should be the #1 ranked team in the country?
Georgia should be #1. It has nothing to do with what they've done in the past. It's really about what they are right now. And I still think they're the best team in the country. And they proved that Saturday. They weren't playing a great team in Florida, but they were playing without their best player and maybe the best player in the country in Brock Bowers. And they were dominating. And I think that's what people failed to realize about this team. Early on, they took their time. They had some close calls, but in recent weeks, they have been dominating. They have been explosive. Carson Beck has really emerged as a nice replacement to Stetson Bennett. And I'm not going to scream and holler. I'm not going to jump up and down because it will take care of itself. But Ohio State has beaten Notre Dame. They've beaten Penn State. Okay, big deal. I think Georgia is the best team in the country right now.
I respectfully disagree. I try to defer to the great Paul Finebaum. I truly, truly do. But the bottom line is that I'm looking at Ohio State, and yes, you beat Penn State, you beat Notre Dame, okay, who are 11 and 15 respectively. All right, I'm just looking at it right now.
Yeah.
Those are 2 victories over top 2 teams. I mean, that's just how I look at it. I'm looking at the #2 ranked defense in the nation. I'm looking at the fact that it's the only team among the 5 unbeaten teams at the top of the rankings with 2 wins over top 15 teams. I have to take that into consideration. And here's what I would challenge y'all on. Y'all act like it's a big deal to be, oh, my Lord, if Georgia's not #1 because their strength of schedule isn't that impressive. As long as you're one of the top 4 teams and you're going to be in the college football playoffs, what's the big deal? Now, it matters to me if you're saying to me that they're the reigning, defending 2-time champions, right? And if you're not the #1 ranking, it could cost you an opportunity to be in the national championship. I feel you on that. But that's not the case. We have a situation now where we have a playoff system. And so to me, your strength of schedule matters. The quality of the opponents that you beat should matter. And if that, and when I look at Ohio State compared to the other teams, I say to myself, yo, they deserve to be #1. Now you're going to have to beat Georgia to win the chip, ain't you? You got to beat Georgia to win the national championship. They are the reigning 2-time defending national champions. You're still going to have to go through them, but that don't mean they got to be #1 just because they're the reigning defending champions. If you're playing against softies, you understand? People that's sitting up there and going to Mr. Softy looking for ice cream all the damn time. That's how soft their opponents are. And that other team ain't doing that. Then I got to give credit where credit is due. I'm going with Ohio State at #1, the Ohio State as the #1 team in the country.
Paul's 100% right. You're lost as usual. I mean, the bottom line is here, Stevie, if you're going to have the question, if Sammy and James Dunn are going to put the question on the board, let's answer it. And there's no question about it. Georgia, it's not their fault that the SEC told them they couldn't play Oklahoma. The schedule's not their fault. Right. They had Oklahoma they were going to play, and they couldn't play them because they're going to join a conference. It's not their fault that the SEC East
I didn't say it was their fault.
And Stevie, I'm not finished. I'm not finished. How about them at Notre Dame? Freeman didn't even have 10 guys on the field for crying out loud in the last drive on the touchdown. And if anybody's going to sit there and say anything about Penn State, Franklin, as we've discussed last week, Paul agrees, he might be one of the most overrated college football coaches in the history of the sport. He never beats a good team. He should have lost to Indiana this week for crying out loud.
I agree with that part. I agree with the Indiana part. Yeah.
So beating... So you're making a big deal. Ohio State beat Notre Dame, was lost again, who, let's face it, Notre Dame, not great, and Penn State's overrated. Georgia deserves, if the question's the question, if that's what you guys want to ask, I didn't pick the questions, Dunn does. But the question is, who deserves to be #1? It's Georgia.
Okay. Well, first of all, the question was answered. You just didn't agree with the answer. So let's get that out the way. It ain't like the question was avoided. I answered the damn question. And I said Ohio State deserves to be the #1 team in the nation at this moment because amongst the top 4 teams, they're the only ones that beat top 15 opponents. Nobody else did. That's why I feel that way. Now, that's not to say, and you know this, Paul, that's not to say that Georgia is not better than Ohio State. It's not to say that they wouldn't beat Ohio State if they played them. I'm saying at this moment in time, based on what we normally judge, it's not just the talent, it's not just what you do, but it's about who you do it against. You can do that for now. And guess what? Aren't there other rankings coming out as the season progresses, Paul?
Okay.
Is that not true? Well, guess what? The list is fluid.
Central Michigan investigating photos that show a man resembling Michigan staff member Connor Stallions on the sideline for the September 1st opener at Michigan State. Paul, talk to me.
This has become an absolutely disgraceful scandal that nobody wants to talk about, Molly. And I realize that universities like to hide behind, well, we can't comment, it's NCAA policy. That's a bunch of garbage. We all know that. It's time for Jim Harbaugh to stand up and speak out. Or somebody. He's got talking heads that can go out there instead of him. And it looks worse every day. A couple weeks ago, it seemed like, well, maybe the NCAA is coming after Harbaugh. Maybe they didn't like the way he dealt with them in the other investigation that, by the way, is still going on. And now you have this, and every week, every day, I should say, there's another innuendo. There's something else thrown against the wall. And the real story of the CFP isn't the conversation we just had. It's whether Michigan should even be allowed to participate. The committee chairman last night, guys, said, well, our job is to pick the best team, not the other job. The NCAA is involved in the other thing. Well, the NCAA will take the rest of our lifetimes to investigate this. So someone needs to step up. It's not going to be the University of Michigan. They're not saying anything, although it was widely reported the other day by the Wall Street Journal that they have put a pause on renewing Harbaugh's contract. Is that not telling? Of course it is. On the other hand, the Big Ten could step in, but they're not going to. They haven't said a peep, guys, because they don't want to take Michigan off the board, because by the end of the season, Michigan could be the #1 team in the country, and the Big Ten has only had one national champion in modern time, and they don't want to scrape that away. So they're all going to lock hands and support Jim Harbaugh, who looks like he's shepherding a sleazy, disgusting, cheating program. Somebody tell me I'm wrong.
Not wrong in my eyes. I completely agree with you. I mean, and I love Petitti, the commissioner of the Big Ten, but this is embarrassing. And I can't take on. And you're right, Harbaugh, who likes to be quirky and likes to think, I'm Michigan, you're not, above the, the peons like you and me, doesn't want to answer any questions. This is a disaster. I mean, look, you got a guy wearing a Central Michigan hat during a football game, and he's a Michigan staffer against Michigan State. I mean, that is a disgrace. And here's the thing. Here's the thing that bothers me. When I hear this, I heard this about Belichick with Spygate. Well, it's overrated. It doesn't mean anything. Well, if it's so overrated, why are you doing it? If this is a waste of time and it doesn't mean much and you get nothing out of it, well, why are you doing it? Why are you going to these lengths to get these edges in these games? This is a terrible thing for Michigan. And here's one other thing. Michigan likes to think they're on that Notre Dame level. The great big Michigan. Football for 150 years. The big house. We do it the right way. We cherish academics. We try to win properly. Well, hold on now. You got every one of these wins, and I understand that the games are awful. They could have won anyway, but all these wins now have a little asterisk next to it. And Harbaugh, your head coach, who's already been suspended 3 games for the cheeseburger mess in the pandemic a few years ago, how about somebody make Harbaugh answer a few questions, for crying out loud? And don't tell me this is not the court of law. He's not going to jail. How about a few questions from the media? Hey, Jim, what is this about? He works for you. Why is he at these games? How about Harbaugh answer something? Paul's 1,000% correct. I'm so down on Michigan, it's hard to believe. Go ahead, Stevie, take it away. Fire away.
I completely agree with both of you. I mean, I got to tell you something right now. Harbaugh needs to be made to answer questions. I know he laughed about it yesterday because Pat McAfee did such a phenomenal imitation of Harbaugh at a press conference. It was hysterical. You got to go see it. But the bottom line is that this is a serious matter because it clearly involves cheating. There is no way to slice it. And if you're the Big Ten, here's what you need to contemplate as your nightmare. Suppose Michigan runs the table. Suppose Michigan gets into the college football playoff. What do you think people are going to be talking about? You think the national media is going to let this go? You think that you're going to show up? You got coaches stealing signs and, infiltrating other teams on the sideline and stuff like that. And you think that you're going to get to the college football playoffs, all right, probably at the expense of an Alabama or Washington or somebody like that. We understand it. And you think you're going to get on center stage for a national college football playoff, a national championship on the line, and the national media is going to ignore how you possibly got there? Michigan is one of the top defenses in the nation. I think they are the top defense in the nation, total defense, and what have you. We all know how formidable they are. Well, guess what? What role did you stealing signals and signs play in your formidability as a defensive stalwart? Those kind of questions come into play. And so to me, I think it's a huge miss and a huge mistake on a part of the Big Ten to let this slide. You need to bring the momentum, the heavy hand of the conference down upon that program to answer questions and to address this. And dare I say, if they don't give you answers to your liking, you make moves to make sure they don't represent the conference in a college football play.
Last word here, Paul.
Yeah, I think that's accountability is important here, Stephen A. Let's quit hiding behind everybody else. And I think Doggy said it. Tony Petitti's a well-respected man. He's the new commissioner there. He's been there long enough. He has to call these guys in and say, we have to have answers, because the credibility of the college football playoff is going to be tattered otherwise. Because Stephen A., you made the best point I've heard in this 3-week controversy. Someone's going to get left out at the expense of Michigan, and that is completely outrageous and unfair to folks who do it honestly.